Okay, welcome everyone. Going to do a quick news update for the day. I'm going to try to do these on a regular basis. I always get lots of questions from folks about what does everything mean. And right now, for example, the Eugene Carroll decision, $83 million. What's behind all that? So, first of all, I want to ask you to subscribe. I'm going to be doing some subscriber special posts on these things moving forward, and the button's right there. I hope you'd be willing to do it if you're on Twitter, and if you're anywhere else, just like and subscribe. So let's move to the first story. The Eugene Carroll story has become a really big issue because we just had a judgment yesterday where Trump is supposed to pay $83.3 million. Now, I listened to commentary all over the place. And the question is, how do you pay that much in damages? It was $65 million, I think was the punitive portion of this. And they were coming in asking for 24. Big issue. I'm going to play this little clip. Andy McCarthy was commenting on Fox News. If it'll play.
So at least $2 million, Andy, is the verdict in the financial verdict in this case. We know the former president has already said that he will appeal this case. So how do you expect it to work from here with regard to all of that?
Well, I think the appeal has been hurt by the verdict because what I think former President Trump would like to tell an appellate court is that the jury was steamrolled into this conclusion, but they're obviously very discriminating. The verdict makes sense in the sense that they acquitted, or they found him not liable, rather, on the rape charge. They found him guilty on the sexual abuse charges, the lesser ones. And the reason for that, I think, is that if you take the testimony of the three different women who testified in the trial, only Eugene Carroll went so far as to say that an actual rape occurred.
So I wanted to get to that for you there and let you hear Andy McCarthy's opinion. And the one thing that he's not talking about there is the fact that Eugene Carroll has a whole string of tweets showing that she has a very sexually active mind that she's willing to show in public. None of that was admissible in the court. There's a whole bunch about her. In fact, there was no, and again, this is a civil trial, not a criminal trial, so you could get into a bit of a problem in terms of evidence and so forth. The purpose of evidence is a little bit different in a civil trial than a criminal one. Nonetheless, there's no evidence at all that the rape occurred. And that's why, as Andy McCarthy pointed out, they didn't get him on the rape charge. But on the rest of it, tell me what the real harm is to Eugene Carroll. Did Trump go overboard? Maybe. I guess that's possible. But seriously, I do not get why we get to this place constantly where the legal system is targeting and focusing on one man right now in a lot of cases. And you got to show me that he's guilty of all of them. This is the one that is worse because he kept going after her afterwards. And when there was already a case that was dismissed. So I don't know. You could question the judgment there. I still think that this was a show trial, and the purpose of this is to make Donald Trump as incapable as possible of running for president, because there are a lot of people that don't want him to be able to do so. Okay, let's move on. So there's going to be an appeal on the case, and there's a conflict of interest thing that's popped up here. Donald Trump's lawyers will use an insane and previously unknown, quote, conflict of interest between Eugene Carroll's lawyer and the judge presiding over her defamation case. It turns out that Robert Kaplan, the judge, was a sort of a mentor to the lawyer for Eugene Carroll. Okay, it's important, actually. It apparently was not disclosed prior to the trial. Somehow they found out about it afterwards. Now, I'm going to say this. I think this is significant. The problem is it may be really hard to deal with once the trial comes for appeal. So one of the issues is Donald Trump going to have to pay this up front right now? I've heard some back and forth on this. I don't know that there's any actual good reason to think he's not going to have to pay it quickly or provide a bond for it. So all that's going to be coming down the pike. Okay, let's move on here to the cases in the civil fraud for Donald Trump, which are coming up. This is going to be happening this week. In fact, we're anticipating it. It might happen while I'm recording this. The potential here is for $370 million judgment by Judge Engoron in this civil fraud trial. Now, I have to tell you, I really think we need to be concerned for Donald Trump on this one. Because here's what's at stake. The $370 million is bad enough. He might have to pay that immediately. I don't know what kind of cash he could put together, what he has to sell, all that sort of thing. But he may not be able to do business in New York at all. And that may be effective immediately upon the verdict. We're going to have to find out as this comes up. That would be a blow to him, but this is even the worst blow. His children might not be able to run the company. Now, I think that that's an outrage if they do that. Yes, I grant they're going to be looking at the fact that he could still control it through them. But you know what? You can build up the firewalls, and everything I hear from people I know, I don't know Eric Trump personally, but people I know who know Eric say that he's actually capable of doing this. I think it's horrible that they would bring this against Donald Trump and then make his children pay the same price. That's an outrage. So what's really the crime here? Well, we already established that he didn't overvalue anything. That's absolutely clear. Ken Griffin, the guy who owns a major investment firm, one of the wealthiest investment firm owners in the world, he just built a house in the Mar-a-Lago area of Palm Beach that has a smaller footprint than Mar-a-Lago does, and it was not even as large a house. I think close, but not quite as large. It's like 2/3 the size of Donald Trump's house. His was valued at well over $500 million. Donald Trump's property is clearly potentially worth $1 billion, and they were trying to put an $18 million figure. That's just one thing that's an outrage here. But by the way, no bank or insurance company claimed any fraud in this case themselves. It was purely the prosecutor making an assertion and having experts decide that he was overvaluing things. No one was harmed. Every loan was paid back. No fraudulent insurance claims were made, and they went ahead with this trial. It's just an outrage what they're doing to Donald Trump. This one is you might make a case that Eugene Carroll case is possible. That there's possibly something there. I don't think so at all. But I mean, you might say that he was going back and forth with her. It does affect her livelihood or whatever, potentially. I guess you could make that case. You can't make any case in this civil fraud case. And Judge Engoron decided this from the beginning. He's already said that Trump's guilty. It's just outrageous. This is a total attack. Okay. But good news for Donald Trump coming along the way. Turns out that the ex-IRS consultant that leaked Donald Trump's and Jeff Bezos and other tax returns, he's going to go to jail for 5 years. By the way, sweetheart deal. This is massive, massive problem. This guy should be going to jail for 20 years or more. I mean, this should be a very serious sentence. And I think there's no way they could get by with this one. But the release of IRS information, of personal financial information in the IRS, is a severe criminal penalty. And this looks like a sweetheart deal to me. But I guess there's some justice in the world. So move on to the next thing. So Alejandro Mayorkas is going to be impeached, apparently, in the House. Impeachment papers have been laid out. Listen, what's happening on the border is an outrage. I'm going to get in a minute to the immigration deal that's happening there because that's an outrage too. But what's been happening on the border is totally horrible. The 1986 deal that Ronald Reagan made, where he gave amnesty to, I think it was on the order of 1 million people who were here illegally. Didn't give them citizenship, but he gave them amnesty, and then they had to go through a process. It had strict regulations about enforcing the border. In other words, the laws on the books are very stringent. Donald Trump used them. I mean, he built the wall or was building the wall, and that did make a difference. But they were actually enforcing things on the border. Courts were trying to stop things that Congress had even passed. But the laws are there. Donald Trump proved you can get the border in hand at least. And people were not coming up like they started to in the beginning of Trump administration, but they were not coming up like they did beforehand. That's a big issue. So, Mayorkas I think is worthy of impeachment. What's interesting, though, is Michael Chertoff, the former DHS secretary, wrote a Wall Street Journal article where he tells Republicans not to impeach Mayorkas. Let me read just the beginning of it here. Political and policy disagreements aren't impeachable offenses, Chertoff starts out. The Constitution gives Congress the power to impeach federal officials for treason, bribery, and, quote, other high crimes and misdemeanors. That's a high bar. In the history of our republic, only one cabinet secretary has been impeached for receiving corrupt kickback payments. By the way, Michael Chertoff has a lot at stake here. And he does, I didn't see in the article where he revealed the fact that his companies he has run and been a part of have made tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions, but certainly tens of millions of dollars providing equipment for security, border security. In other words, he had his DHS position. Then he went right out and made a bunch of millions of dollars as a consultant and a contractor for the federal government. So that's not discussed here. But let's get to the standard. I would say this: Mayorkas is equally as bad as the one person who was impeached for bribery, whose name is escaping me. Anyway, think about this. High crimes and misdemeanors. What does that mean? Okay, we might not see a high crime here, but I think we see a misdemeanor. Chertoff is probably saying someone convicted of a misdemeanor. That's not what that meant. It meant an action taken. It was related to an action where people, and dereliction of duty, which, he gets all up in arms at. You can't just impeach someone for dereliction of duty. I ask the question, why not? The high bar is proving the claim, not making the claim. And I would say any dereliction of duty, which, by the way, the impeachment papers don't talk about a dereliction of duty. It points specifically to the fact that there are laws on the books that Mayorkas is entirely ignoring. That's the problem. So we need to possibly do more of this in this day and age. We have come to a place where federal officials in the executive branch are ignoring the laws that Congress passes, but also Congress has a duty, a responsibility to write laws that are sufficiently restrictive. And they don't do that. In fact, that's probably the topic of a video sometime that I'll do. It's an important issue and it needs to be discussed. But Mayorkas is just way out of hand in everything that he's doing. He's guilty of not following the laws. They are precisely making these borders be open. In fact, I want to point this out. Biden, according to The Guardian here, he vows to shut down the border, quote unquote, if Senate immigration bill passes. I'm going to get into the immigration bill. Biden can shut the border down right now. He can literally do it. And he refuses to do it, which gets to the point of this bill going through the Senate right now. Bill Malugin wrote this story. Bill Malugin of Fox News. He noted this, and here's his tweet post that revealed it, I think, 2 or 3 days ago. He said, mandatory detention of all single adults. I'm going to play something. I'm going to show you Andy McCarthy addresses that. And I think he had a brilliant point on it. I'll get to that in just a second. But look at this next section. Mandatory shutdown of border once average daily migrant encounters hits 5,000. Importantly, this 5,000 number includes 1,400 CBs. Anyway, a lot of details there. Here's basically the case. The standard is set. Any president of the United States can ensure that 1.825 million new illegals can come across the border every year. That's what this bill does. It's amnesty. It's literally amnesty. And this can get way out of hand. Now, I've had people refute, because and any of you looking closely will see it in the tweet. There is a provision that locks down the border, and that it's the average gets to 5,000, so therefore it's not really 1.825 million. Well, I'm going to tell you this: Joe Biden is going to make sure it's 1.825 million if this bill passes. That's the thing. You've literally initiated amnesty into our immigration policy. This actually opens up immigration. It does not fix it, notwithstanding what others have said, which I'll get to in just a moment. Here's Andy McCarthy's tweet on this. Pardon, it's coming up. Andy McCarthy said this: existing law provides for, he retweeted Bill Malugans' tweet. Existing law provides for mandatory detention of, quote, all persons, unquote, entering illegally. If they write a chest-beating law calling for mandatory detention of all single adults, A, that actually guts the better law we already have, and B, why would anyone trust them to enforce it? And that's the other thing. You could say that the border has to be shut down, but the person you're trusting is Joe Biden. It's crazy. And the dispute on this has been rolling out into Congress. You have got Mitt Romney out there just beating his chest. Oh my gosh, they're having Donald Trump is talking to Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, and telling people how this immigration thing is going to happen. First of all, Mitt Romney's irrelevant anymore. He's leaving. He's useless. He's been a problem for this country ever since 2012, when he frankly did not fight to beat Barack Obama in the election. A lot of people stood up for him. He let every one of them down because he didn't have any intention of winning. And then he comes back and does what he does in the Senate. He hates Donald Trump. That's the point. Why should Donald Trump not have any input on this? He's I think it's almost a foregone conclusion. Nikki Haley's still in the race, but it's a foregone conclusion. Donald Trump's getting the nomination unless a miracle happens and all these never-Trumpers get what they want. They're all up in arms about anyone listening to Donald Trump on the issue. We used to have a time in this country where Republicans, even when they didn't like the person, Reagan's 11th commandment, they would still work with them. It's so obvious that Donald Trump is going to get the nomination. Why is it so problematic for Mike Johnson or anyone to listen to him? And by the way, I would also retort, he's actually the one person who has been effective on the border. That's a huge issue. Okay, so we're going to get to the next topic. News media outlets / jobs is our next one. And you've probably heard about some of this. Insider, the New York Daily News, Paramount, Los Angeles Times, Condé Nast and Sports Illustrated are all letting people go. Our news media is an outrage. It's not doing us any good anymore. They lie. They cheat. They actually, in most cases, are the mouthpiece of the government talking points, not revealing for the American people what's actually going on. The reason the First Amendment protects the media is so that the truth could be revealed. And by the way, at the founding of our country, the media then was very partisan, sometimes very nasty in what they said about their opponents. This did not, it did not pose a problem for the founding fathers. They knew that was going on. They knew how sometimes outrageous the media could get. They might not have liked it, but they knew that freedom was important because if people got enough information, they could make a good decision. It doesn't happen anymore. And every one of these publications that's letting people go has made a big mistake. Sports Illustrated, my goodness, I hate the swimsuit issue. I just, for moral reasons, I've always hated their swimsuit issue. But from a business perspective, what that did for them is it was an issue of the magazine that everyone would go and buy, like far beyond their normal readership. So they'd have a big influx of cash when they put that out every year. It also was a constant opportunity and reminder for new subscriptions to come. In other words, immoral though it was a great business model for them. They destroyed it by putting a fat person and a transgender person on the cover. And you've totally destroyed your business model. This is where go woke, go broke. But they're a different story. The rest of it is just about lying. And I want to play this for you. Chamath Palihapitiya on the All In podcast had a very great insight about what's going on in media right now, and I wanted to share it with you.
I went to trends.google.com, and I just compared WSJ.com to BI.com to Twitter.com to NewYorkTimes.com. And what's incredible is two takeaways. The first is that media is really the least relevant it's ever been, and they really are on a lifeline. That's number one. And second is if you just scroll down a little bit, Nick, Twitter is really like a universally relied upon resource in the United States. The WSJ actually also does a pretty good job. But if you look at, for example, Business Insider, it's really 3 states, Texas, California, and New York. And if you look at the New York Times, a little bit further down, it's a bunch of the traditional Democratic states. So what you have is this regional kind of segregation that's happening in terms of information. But for the most part, nobody cares about these print outlets. And I think that that explains why you're forced to lie. If telling the truth, which is basically a commodity, it's weird, but it actually is a commodity. It's just there. The truth is there. Yes. And you can't build a business by telling the truth. You have 2 choices. One is to opine on the truth.
Opinion.
But that then is a function of, frankly, to be honest, your intellect and how interesting you are as a person and how you relay that information. And you see the people that do that well. You can debate the truthfulness of all of these people, but the Rachel Maddows and the Ben Shapiros of the world, Tucker, they're just extremely eloquent, interesting arbiters of the information. They may take spicy takes on the truth, but they don't outright lie. And then you have everybody else who's frankly not.
And by the way, a quick note there. I often feel that Rachel Maddow lies, but I get his point here. I think it's a very good one and worth noting.
Nearly as good as them, and the choice is to lie, and that's why Ackman can say this about Business Insider, because Business Insider doesn't have a Rachel Maddow, nor do they have a Tucker Carlson or a Ben Shapiro. And so what choice do they have except to lie? And so for all of us, it's a very simple litmus test. You're better off trusting a really opinionated, articulate person. Why? Because the thing that they probably don't want to lose is their fame. But the anonymous person at Business Insider has gone into a totally different direction. They've decided to lie as a service. And so you just have to ignore it all.
I think he's so right on that. I really like what Chamath had to say there, because that is the situation that we're in. It puts a different perspective on it. Like a lot of you think, oh man, they're lying because they're trying to overrun us and work with the government. And I think a lot of that's true, but that's the business model problem. And it's going to break down. You cannot sustain this for a long period of time. And quite frankly, I think most people for a lot of years have gotten their news and their understanding of the news from those who opine upon it. This is why Fox News and MSNBC and CNN tended to go away from hard news to more opinion and discussion topics throughout the day. Now, I think there's something lost with that. I would like to see more hard news in those areas. But the reality is people don't know what they can trust anymore in relation to that. But it is a human thing to be able to figure out if someone is accurate and to get their opinion. The potential harm is that you'll get a kind of an echo chamber for some people. But let's be honest, the echo chamber has existed in the general public forever. A bigger problem, which deserves a video sometime, is our education system doesn't teach people to be very meticulous in their considerations of what people say based upon thinking. And again, you'll never get that completely in any society. But when you have that effort in there, people will have some touch point. And the more young kids who grow up to be really sharp in their understanding of what people are saying or looking through it, that builds kind of a general skill throughout the populace. We used to have that in this country. I mean, even when we didn't have public schools in the 19th century broadly, where you had some people who didn't even go to school or didn't get much schooling except, hunt and peck in between running their farms, you had a better informed populace than you do now. So these are all big issues. These are the stories of the day. Going to keep our eye out for what happens with Donald Trump. Please like and subscribe to me. You help me do this. I'm doing this to give you a chance to get my perspective on it. I always have people asking me for it. I hope this was helpful for you. I know it's a little long, and thank you for taking the time to listen to it.